The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco. And I am a lucky guy tonight for a number of reasons. I have a guest to join me. He is going to talk some ball. Gene Hutmaker, a fellow podcaster of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Welcome, Gene.
Thank you. I am here to talk some ball.
Talk some ball we will, but first I have an announcement that concerns the network and me and Gene and everybody around. I have agreed in principle to produce and host a syndicated radio show for Byline Sports America, and or is it Sports Byline America? I don't know, but they've got like 200 affiliates all over the world, all over the country. Armed Force Radio, which goes all over the world, and I am absolutely thrilled. It will be a sports show based on just what I've been doing with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, talking to interesting people in all walks of sports life. We talk to umpires, we talk to players, we talk to groundskeepers, we talk to announcers, we talk to journalists, we talk to authors, and we talk to passionate fans. So I'm looking forward to making this show the most watched or listened to, in this case, syndicated radio show in history, syndicated sports show in history. I think it'll be fun, and I look forward to it. It is also April 20th, 4/20, and my son, Philip Satin Tyko, was born 28 years ago on this very date. So happy birthday, Philip, and I'm proud of you, kid. There you go. That's how my day's gone. Now, Gene, you're here to talk some sports. You're a Cardinal fan. You got anything to say about how the Cardinal season is going?
Well, they're a little bit over 500. You can't tell anything about the cold weather games, and the whole league. I just expect the regular teams to bounce back, and I expect them to be probably a wild card. I think the Cubs are the class of the Central, and they got to beat out the Pirates. I think are just 12-7, but I just think the Cardinals will be at least in a wild card.
Okay.
But Wainwright's not there yet. I was hoping a big year for Wainwright, but you can't tell too much in April. Martinez.
I was hoping a big year for Wainwright too, because he's on my fantasy team. As was Leon, the relief pitcher who had been getting bombed. You recently did the Cardinals sign a relief pitcher. I can't think of his name, but
Holland.
They brought him up. Who was it?
Holland.
Yeah, Hollins. Greg Hollins has some closing experience.
But he's so far it's not materializing. Of course, it's April, and they just brought him up, and he was like rehabbing or whatever. So they'll be, you have to play it out a little bit.
Okay. Do they miss Pujols when they let him go, or decided not to pursue his free agency?
Well, for what he's doing with the Angels, I mean, he's productive, but I think, I think they were still decent. And I understand him going with the offer and being able, and even though I'm an old National Leaguer, I do not like to see a pitcher bat. And I understand if there was a DH in the National League, I think it would have been more to stay in St. Louis. But you can see he's DH now, and he hobbles around the bases. He's still got some pop, but I
I'm talking
understand.
more of a fan, from a fan standpoint. Would have it been nice to see him complete his career in St. Louis? Just from that, all things considered, is he helping the Angels more than having him, more than it hurts the Cardinals not having him? But I'm talking from a fan's standpoint.
Yeah, well, Pujols was a legend. Everybody was, and he was a real good guy. The one thing for the total history of St. Louis, he had a chance to. I don't know if he could ever say he would be better than Stan the Man, but now that's out the window because he's to me the best first baseman the Cardinals ever had, but still he had like a 10-year career with the Cardinals. And they've had some
good ones. They have had some good ones. So I could think Johnny Mize, Will Clark, Jack Clark,
Jim Bottomley,
Bill White. Pardon me?
Jim Bottomley, the Hall of Famer.
Yes, Jim Bottomley.
Yeah, he was MVP in 28 or one of them years.
Right.
But Pujols is one of the top. I've been following baseball about the same as you, and to me, the number one player I ever saw was Mays. Then I would say Mantle, then Aaron, and then Pujols. But I'm not counting Musial and Williams because I only saw them for less than half their career. But I did see them; they were still real great. But they're probably the top four, I think, not counting pitchers. Number 4.
Yeah, you've seen.
I've seen for most of their career. I didn't see Mantle and Mays in '51. Maybe they've been on TV a little bit, but I was only like 6 then. So, but overall, Mays number 1, Mantle number 2. Of course, Mantle's stats really suffered after 65. He would have been like a 310 hitter with all that pop. And Pujols probably number 4.
But then again, would you say DiMaggio if you put him in there?
Yeah, but I didn't see him. I'm just talking about the guys I've seen.
Okay, that's good rating.
All time. Babe Ruth is Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams and Musial and DiMaggio and all that. You could probably, outside of Babe Ruth being number 1, I can't see anybody have to be better than him. For one of the simple reasons is that he was the best left-hander of his time pitching and the greatest hitter. And after that, everybody else is vying for the runner-up spot. Some people want to say Ty Cobb, Willie Mays, Joe DiMaggio, whoever you want. I mean, you got about 10, 15 guys that you can throw in there, and even like a Jimmy Fox.
It's very subjective at that point. People can make an argument based on how well these players did for their team, how many rings they have.
That's hard. Rings are kind of hard. It's like Ted Williams has none, Ernie Banks has none. It's a little bit hard for that, especially in the American League when the Yankees won like about a third of the fourth of the World Series pennants.
Right. Well, when you judge a guy all time, you have to see how he did do in postseason, and because that means a lot. Because it's a team game. It's not necessarily all an individual game. It shouldn't be rating a guy. Shouldn't be just merely on stats. There should be the intangibles. What kind of a teammate he was. Does he get the runner over? That kind of thing.
Well, like a guy like Stanton is really struggling now, and of course, playing in Miami, you have like 2,000 people in the stands. You're not in a pennant race, so there's relatively not much pressure on you. And you can say the same thing. I saw the end of Kiner's career, and the same thing with Kiner. He led the league in home runs in 7 straight years, but the Pirates were always a 7th or 8th place team. So there was never really any pressure on him. Not that he couldn't have done it. Same thing with Ernie Banks with the Cubs. I mean, he didn't have pressure on him. Not that they weren't great, but they weren't doing like when Hank Aaron did. The Braves were in a race sometimes, so he had to produce. You could see how he does. That was one of the bad things about A-Rod.
Of what New York press puts on as far as pressure goes. These guys.
Yeah. It's all relative to It's how you handle it.
It's right. And Stanton, he's slumping. Yes, he's shown signs, but he's not sulking. He looks into the camera. He just tells you that I'm coming around. I'm working on it. It's slow spring, but I'm watching film. I see where I'm going. I'm making progress. He's not shirking from it. He's not blaming anybody. He's not blaming the schedule. And remember, these guys are playing under horrendous. You talked about it earlier. The weather conditions have been horrendous.
Horrible. And he's a Florida guy. He's not he's not used to the cold. I would say that probably a lot of them Caribbean guys, when they're playing in the cold, their blood is probably thinner. I would say. I'm not a doctor or anything, but you think that their makeup is from being down there for so long.
Well, you would too, but now I'm looking at a guy I'm a Met fan, looking at a guy named Cabrera, the second baseman, who is incredibly versatile, can play third, can give you a little shortstop, and he's like hitting off to a 323 start, and it's colder than hell, and he's a guy from Venezuela or the Caribbean somewhere. So some guys you can't tell. I still think it's a small number scale. In other words, until you get to 100 at bats, then you can see how things. When guys start getting to that point in early May, then you can start to see how the season is shaping up.
But even though you're talking about the World Series, like the Maggio wasn't 10 of them. And he only batted like 271. Stan Musial wasn't 4 of them and batted 256. Willie Mays wasn't 4 of them and doesn't have a homer. And there's 4 to top 10.
Yet Mickey Mantle went nuts for the Yankees in the World Series.
Well, his average wasn't that great, but because they hit the home runs. And the one thing about Mantle's best World Series was when he ruined the Pirates and he ruined the Cardinals, and they lost both of them. That's why I think he had like 3 homers in each of them. But he didn't have that many heroics in the World Series when they won. I know he hit the homer against the Cardinals, but they lost that World Series, and then he went crazy against the Pirates, and they still lost. His major one was, I think, in '52 when he hit a few homers.
Okay.
But you can't knock 18 home runs. I mean, that's like, But he hit a 256 average. Ted Williams played in one, and of course he got hit with a pitch just before the World Series in a makeup game of American League All-Stars, and he never complained or used it for an excuse. But Williams was probably aching during that World Series because he got hit in the elbow or arm in 46.
Okay. Hey, Gene, I noticed you mentioned a number of sluggers. You mentioned Williams, you mentioned Kiner, Cobb, Mantle, Hayes, Williams. You didn't then and rarely bring up the name Barry Bonds.
Well, I'm anti any juicer, and I know we don't know who juiced, but we know who did juice. And the thing about Bonzi, he was bad in the postseason except for the World Series in 2002, and same thing with A-Rod. A-Rod was he was a bust in the postseason except for 2009 when he won the Babe Ruth Award. And the Babe Ruth Award, I think, is more prestigious than the MLB MVP Award because the Babe Ruth Award for the outstanding player is for the outstanding player of the postseason, which I think is, a better feat than being the MVP of the World Series. But if you're the MVP of the World Series, you get the ring. But being of the total playoffs is the Babe Ruth Award since 2007, which even started before the MVP Award in '55.
Now, that said, he's a juicer, was a juicer, no question in my mind. Was he not hitting against pitchers who were juicers? Didn't the
some of them,
out?
And personally, my opinion with pitchers is I think pitchers were less apt to do it. I just think that they were less apt, but some of the ones, but the ones you don't, so you don't know. If you know, then you're out as far as I'm concerned. It's like some people say, like
I would say then, if you don't know, you can assume because of the era that they lived in, rightly or wrongly, and say, hey, you were in that era, chances are you did steroids. It's been estimated that 80% of the guys.
Yeah, but that's all speculative. Because I hear like Smoltz and a couple other guys on the MLB station saying that's ridiculous.
Maybe.
And you could probably tell. You could tell by people's stats. Like Brett Boone had that one fantastic year. Gonzalez says he was never on him. Gonzo from the Diamondback, but he hit the 57 homers. So, but there's still nothing on him except that he's a suspect because of the great stats that he put up in that one time.
So wouldn't it be fair to just compare players to the era that they played in? In other words, if you can say that the most dominant players of the era that we're talking about are Clemens, right? Bonds, he's one of them. One or two of them.
Well, what does that do to Fred McGriff?
Fred McGriff, by numbers. Do we know that it was nothing on him?
There's nothing on him. So it's just like in the real world. If you skate, and there's basically nothing on him, and his stats were a constant the whole time. But you could tell, Bonds was a Duke Snyder of the 1950s. People don't know how great Snyder was in the mid-50 era. He's hitting 40 homers. He has the NL record with Kiner for most consecutive seasons of 40 homers in the 1900s.
He hit more home runs in the 50s than anybody else.
Yeah, but some people played half of them, like Aaron and Banks. They played half. But he's hit 40 homers in 5 years in a row, hitting 320, 310, stuff like that. And Bonds was that kind of a hitter until he started juicing. Everybody's saying how great he was. And even with his juice,
he would have been a Hall of
wind up with a 300 average.
Started juicing. Then, if he had quit instead of started juicing, you'd be voting him into the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
right?
Clemens too. I have a son that said he would vote for them. That's why they got 54% of the vote, because the voters said that they were Hall of Famers before they started juicing.
Okay, so that.
But once you juice,
my point is, had you not known they juiced, had they quit or not been caught, they'd have been Hall of Famers in your eyes.
Yeah, well, Pudge Rodriguez is one that's in the Hall of Fame. He says he didn't do it, and there's the density of the smoke out of him. Everybody has to do due diligence and figure out if the guy did. To me, I probably would not vote for Pudge Rodriguez because of him saying that only God knows if he was on that list. Piazza, I'd probably give it a pass. I'd probably vote for Piazza. Everyone has their own method of trying to figure out if a guy juiced. And some people have said Tony Gwynn juiced, Ripken juiced. People are saying, and that's the cynical world we live in. But if you skate, you skate. It's like in college. If people cheat for their A's and get caught, do you let them graduate cum laude? No, you probably kick them out. Well, we don't know if the ones who didn't get caught cheated. That's a parallel I'm using.
So that I would just compare players to the players in their own era.
Yeah, but it's not fair to
because of the allegations, we can no longer fairly compare Barry Bonds to Ted Williams and Ty Cobb for who's the best left fielder of all time. But we can compare who the best left fielder of Barry Bonds is time. If you compare him to anybody else, steroids, not steroids, when he used them, when he didn't use them, over the course of a career, he was the best left fielder. Did Ken Griffey use steroids? Look at his
clean.
Body, how it changed.
Yeah, but he's clean. There's no the density of smoke on him.
But that shouldn't determine whether, if there's density of smoke
it's like the real world. If you
industry,
you don't know who robbed the banks, but if you know who robbed the banks, you put them away. Some people rob banks, some people embezzle.
But if everybody is robbing banks, you don't put anybody away.
But not everybody is robbing banks. Same thing with embezzlers. Embezzlers are the white-collar crime. I mean, there's people embezzling that don't get caught, and some do get caught, and they get nailed, and they go to jail. And the ones who don't, they skate, and they're pillars of the community, so to speak.
I know.
If you're caught, you're caught.
If you're caught, but it's not like a crime against the nation.
No, it's a crime against baseball. That's what most of the people feel. Baseball has its own world, and it's a crime against baseball, like betting on baseball. Like Pete Rose was a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it, until he got caught betting on games, which is, and he wasn't like Joe Jackson, where he bet to lose, but he bet to win.
Well, let me tell you something, and I'll tell the audience this too. This is something I learned from Peter Golenbach. Everybody assumes that Pete Rose didn't ever bet against the Reds. He didn't, per se. But what Pete Rose would do, he'd bet the over and under.
Yeah, I understand that.
Pardon me?
I understand that.
Yeah, of course you do. But that means that he could bet and have the Reds win, but have them win 6-5 instead
like saving the points in the college basketball scandals. They had their team win by less than the spread.
Right. So they're not throwing the game, but they're throwing the integrity.
No, I understand that. But like what Joe Jackson did was like we're trying to compare him to Jackson. Gambling's a cardinal. I'm not saying Lewis. It's a cardinal sin. But Jackson actually was throwing games in the World Series, whereas Rose was betting on.
Well, actually, he wasn't throwing games. He accepted money. They gave him money, but look at his stats in that World Series. He didn't know what he was dumber than a post. He didn't know what he was doing.
They show a picture of him working the cash register in the bar. I think that's overblown, his being that stupid. But he was
because
6
he could
for
run
11.
a cash register in the bar.
No, they have a picture of him where he's working in a bar, in South Carolina or wherever. And in fact, there was a story about.
Is that a prop? The guy comes in. Is that a prop-up thing? Put down the mop?
No, that was his job. That was his job. He was working in the bar. In fact, the story went to Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb went in there, and Joe Jackson was kind of embarrassed or whatever, so he didn't know if he would recognize him or whatever. But Jackson in the World Series, his stats are very misleading because 375, and he had a record 12 hits. However, if you break it down, in the straight games, he was 6 for 11. In the thrown games, he was 6 for 21, mostly when the game was already decided. And the manager, Kit Gleason, was complaining about, even though he was charged with no errors, he was like loafing in the outfield. You could loaf to the ball, you could throw to the wrong base, and it's not an error. In the straight games, he played great because that's how great he was. And I understand the Comiskey thing and the money and all of that stuff, but hey, he was throwing the World Series.
Okay, well, get him out of the Hall of Fame, but let's.
Well, he was on the ballot too, right?
Well, I'll tell you, two guys who were betting on baseball, and throwing
Speaker and
stuff. Yeah, Speaker and Cobb, and
it was all thrown out by
writing a book on that as we speak. He's a podcaster on this network, and. So what do you
It was all covered up by Landis. The witness didn't show up.
And Landis is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So
well, you have O'Malley's in the Hall of Fame. So you have personally, I don't even care about Suits. Suits should be. I don't want to bring my kid to the Hall of Fame when he's 13 or something, which I did, and they're looking at a plaque of some owner. I just want the players in there. If they want to, we have some place for the Suits outside of Connie Mack. Connie Mack is the only Suits that should be in there.
I think that's pretty cool. You can be a Hall of Fame executive. That's right. All right. But Walter O'Malley, and there's a lot about Walter O'Malley that isn't known. I'm not making any excuses for him, but the one thing he did do, which he'll always have a place in my heart for taking care of Campy, he brought him out and gave him that benefit, and they stood up 100,000 people, and they lit a candle, and he hired him as an ambassador coach, and he come back in spring training and stuff. So people are gray, not black. It's not black or white.
Yeah, well, Campy was against Robinson in a sense that he wouldn't be doing the protesting and everything. He was more of let's not rock the boat type, and I think O'Malley appreciated that with Campy, rather than like he didn't like Ricky or Jackie.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
And you have to assume everybody being everybody was racist back then. Everybody talks about Yorkie, some more than others. I mean, all the crackers from the South were probably a lot of them. Probably the KKK was a little more social than it is now. Now they have an IQ of minus 100. But then anybody in the South that was anybody was probably in the KKK. It was more of a social standing almost.
What are you saying?
I'm saying when people say
don't brush off Yorkie. Yorkie was not only is he in the Hall of Fame, he is an incredible racist. I mean,
yeah, but everyone was to certain degrees. 15 executives voted against Jackie being in the. One thing about Happy Chandler, he stood up for him, and he was from Kentucky.
That's true.
But he stood up for him. But I mean, everybody's like I grew up in them times, and whites didn't like whites. I mean, the white ethnic groups didn't like it. The white religious, even the Christian Irish hated the Protestants hated the Catholics. So I mean, it was
well, that was
time.
more a social thing. That was more a class thing.
Yeah, but
was a religious thing.
Yeah, but they still.
Because I always being a Jew, I always wondered. People killing themselves over a branch of Christianity. And
look at the Crusades. How many people died in the Crusades back in the thousands or in the year 900s or whatever it was?
Well, there's.
But everybody's complaining about like Ty Cobb, Roger Hornsby, Chris Speaker. They were KKK, but that was probably a social thing to belong to the KKK then, and probably all the highfalutin people in Dixie probably belonged to it. When I was in the Army, and I met blacks from the South, and then when I was in the Army in the 60s, oh my God, I couldn't believe the stuff they were telling me.
Yeah, well, in one sense, you have to appreciate the overtness as opposed to the covertness in Southern prejudice. At least they tell you what it's like, as opposed to how it is up north, where they'll look you in the eye and not tell you how they feel inside. I'd almost rather know, in a sense, who your enemy is.
Well, in the North, they would be not say they're not prejudiced, but in the white area, like when Jackie Robinson was trying to move to Stamford, Connecticut, they didn't want. I mean, they're not prejudiced or nothing, but they didn't want to sell them a house over there.
Well, you've heard the expression that Southern whites hate the race and love the people, and Northern whites hate the people and love the race.
Yeah.
So, again, gets back to overt and covert prejudice.
Well, they just posted on Facebook. Do you recall that the Sports Illustrated with Willie Mays and Lorraine Dane was between Willie Mays and Leo DeRocha?
Yes, I have a picture of that.
I mean, I even had, back in the day, I even had the magazine because I got Sports Illustrated back then when I was like 10 years old. But anyway, people got all upset over that. And then not only because it was a woman, but 1948 World Series, Larry Doby hit a home run. And it was the margin of victory in the 2-1 World Series game, and Steve Gromack was the winning pitcher. And they got a picture of Gromack and Doby embracing each other in a clubhouse, and people went bonkers over that. That's
right.
a famous picture back in.
When in '51, for the first time, 3 blacks played in the same outfield because Mueller got hurt, and they put Hank Thompson in right, and the New York press made little ditties using the N-word about, and the Giants have 3 N's in the outfield and what have you. They were different times.
And basketball teams weren't supposed to have 3 blacks on the court.
Right. Or at one time it was a limit. They could only carry 2 blacks, an unwritten rule. And Red Auerbach, who rest his soul, was the first one to put 5 blacks on the court at the same time.
He just wanted to win. He was just interested in winning.
Right. Funny how...
to me, it's not rocket science.
Yeah. And it doesn't really come down to, when that guy's scoring from second base, it doesn't really come down to the black guy scoring. No. The guy in the uniform, your home team, is scoring. That's what it comes down to. The color. Yet, in today's day and age, and it wasn't this year, but last year, Baltimore Oriole outfielder Jones was taunted mercifully by blacks by bigots in Boston.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And one thing about Adam Jones, I don't know if I told you.
Adam Jones, yes.
At the BAT dinner, I was showing him a copy of my book and everything. We started talking and everything. He goes, by the way, I'm banned in the Bronx too. Good guy, real good guy.
Yeah.
But to give you advice, I teach our high school kids a lot about a lot of stuff, right? And I'm always with the athletes as athletic security. So one of our young black football players, and I'm really tight with him, and I was saying the reason there wasn't many black quarterbacks back when I was growing up was because when you had a black quarterback and a white quarterback vying for a position, the black quarterback might be better, but there's no place to put the white. So in order to utilize both players, you got to let the white guy play quarterback because he can't play anywhere else, where the black guy could play multi-positions. So it wasn't fair, but that way the coach or whatever, they could utilize both players, whereas if the black was the quarterback, they can only utilize him, and the white person would be wasted.
Whoa, that's very, very interesting way of looking at it.
You want to utilize, you have a team and you have 2 guys, they both play quarterback, and the guy's a little bit better, and the other guy, you can't put him anywhere.
Good point. Then why don't you put him on the bench and bring in another black guy?
No, I'm talking about when you have like colleges and so forth, and you have your team,
Oh, you could only have X number of black guys.
I used to do that with my son sometimes. I'd move him out. My sons were the best at any position. Sometimes I have a player like that. I had one guy. He could only play shortstop. As good as the guy was, he could only play shortstop. My son was a great shortstop, so I put my son at the third or second or so I could utilize that kid. And it has nothing to do with fellas, but just kids,
Hey, we're coming to an end, Gene. This is always fun. I enjoy talking ball with you, and that's what we do at the Comfortably Zone Radio Network. And I thank you, and I thank the audience out there for listening. I will ask the audience to do me a real solid. If you enjoy the offerings on this network, would you be good enough to box up some lightly used children's books and take them to the Head Start program in a community near you? Kids need to read. They need to be school ready. They need to get their noses out of the devices and the games. And they need to develop an imagination that only reading can give you. So if you do that for me, it would be great. Hope you come back next week. Gene, thank you again. And
you're welcome.
Have a great night, everybody. Adios.
Let's go Red Sox.
Okay. Go us. Yeah. Adios.